Welcome to We Zombie City Tours. Advanced civilizations used to live where you live. The evidence is all around us, hidden in plain sight. Our ancestors were pyramid builders, experts at transporting and building with heavy stone, aka Masonry. Their faces and their logos are engraved in stone all over our cities, and their pyramids still surround us. Now here's some more ridiculous claims. There's a single God that created you, me, the world, and all things in it, and he created a specific location of land that he deems better than all other locations of land, and he promised this land to a man named Abraham and all his children for forever. This is why we've all heard the phrase the promised land. And the land we currently call USA is the land God promised to Abraham, and our cities and our mountains are actually the proof of it. And God promises that it will remain the most blessed land on earth as long as its inhabitants follow Jesus Christ. And if they don't, it gets cursed, destroyed, and given away to somebody else. So let's look at the fruits. Is the most choice land prospering, or is it being deteriorated and given away? If you're curious, enjoy the vids. If you're not, I'm sure I'll hear from you in the comments telling me how dumb I am. Either way, dig deeper, explore your city, and most importantly, explore your God. Ask him questions and study his word. We're having a little fun in Portland, Maine. Welcome, zombies. Welcome, zombies. It's been a solid 4 years since I've uploaded a video to this channel. We're going to be looking at Portland, Maine. Before we dive into that, I wanted to share just a little bit about why I've been absent for 4 years. It's not because I lost interest in these topics. It's not because I got lazy about uploading. In fact, the complete opposite happened. I got way more interested in these topics, had a bunch more questions that I started seeking answers for, and spent much more time and resources trying to figure some things out. And 4 or 5 years ago, as I was working on uploading videos to this channel, I started paying a lot more attention to the people and the symbols that are on these buildings. And as I did that, I just started to learn a lot more. The main symbol, the main person and symbols that I started having some questions about was what I refer to as the stone woman. Because there's this stone woman wearing robes. Most of the time she's holding a sword and some scales, some balances, but oftentimes she has other symbols as well. But she repeats over and over and over and over again on this architecture all across the country. And so I became very curious about who she is, why she is, what's she about, what does she mean, who is she, and also the other symbols as well, like the fasces, for example, like and other symbols as well. And that just opened up a very different story that I think we're missing when we look at this architecture. And so I spent 4 years putting together, researching, trying to find these answers. And as I got some answers, I've been putting together a presentation that I've finally been able to complete. There's still questions, like I still have more questions, absolutely, but who the stone woman is, what some of these symbols on these buildings are, who built these buildings, who's destroying these buildings, who's lying about these buildings. I've put together a very good presentation that answers those questions. And that presentation is on this We Zombie Rod of Iron channel. I wanted to put it on a separate channel because I want this We Zombie City Tours channel to really just be a look at city by city, state by state, state by state. But this presentation that I put together on the We Zombie Rod of Iron channel, if you look at the playlist right here, I call the presentation The Stone Woman. And as you can see on the thumbnail, it says Ancient Covenant and Conspiracy. Because I believe that's what's going on here, is there's an ancient covenant that God made with mankind, and there's also an ancient conspiracy that the devil made against mankind. And that's where this weird architecture and these weird stories and lies about it all come from and what they all relate to. And that's what the symbols and the stone woman and all the other people on these buildings is showing us, is telling us, is reminding us of. And I'll leave it linked in the description of this video. So now let's take a look at Portland, Maine, and you'll see right here, here's the stone woman in Portland, Maine. And she's not always stone. Sometimes she's copper, sometimes she's gold. She's definitely telling us a very, very important story. And of course, is not the one that we read about in the history books in the schools and all that. And so one thing I'm going to be doing that's different than my previous videos is I'm going to be exploring these cities in a very similar way, looking at all the architecture and all that, but specifically looking at this stone woman and some of these symbols and showing some explanations for them. But I can't, it's too much to explain over and over and over again in every city, every video of every city that I make. So that's what the stone woman presentation is, those 12 videos. So if you want the full, in-depth, entire explanation, that's what that's there for. But some little snippets that we're going to pay attention to is that the stone architecture comes from an ancient covenant that God made with man. And that's where this exceedingly heavy masonry comes from. That's why there's the stone woman and all these other symbols on this building. And that the people who built these buildings are actually the civilizations that these scriptures talk about, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and I know there's a friction point for some people, but also the Book of Mormon. And there's also the flip side of that, which is the ancient conspiracy, devil making a conspiracy against mankind, and they're the ones that are lying and destroying everything. And that includes, we get all these stories of, oh, they rapidly constructed these insane buildings in like 2 years, but then also you can clearly tell that they're being pillaged and demolished. And then also their stories about fires over and over and over again. So this is some of the stuff we're going to look at right now in Portland, Maine. And you'll see right here, I also put the Promised Land, like I also talked about in the intro of this video, because I believe that's what's going on here. And that's what the stone woman is a symbol of. And that's why the ancient conspiracy is lying and destroying this stuff, is because this is actually the Promised Land, and this architecture has to do with this covenant that God made with mankind. Specifically, it goes back to Abraham and Jacob, named Israel, and Joseph of Egypt. This is what I'm saying. It's a lot to really lay out over and over again in each one of these videos. That's why I made the stone woman presentation. If that interests you, if you want that whole breakdown, it's on the We Zombie Rod of Iron channel. So this stone woman right here in Portland, Maine, they call it the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. And you'll notice right here that it says that, you can see it, right? So she's clad in armor and she's wearing a robe. She's always, always, always wearing a robe. Why a robe? Cowboys and coal miners were interested in robes, and also you'll see that all the men on these buildings are also wearing robes. Like, cowboys and coal miners were building stone architecture with robed people? Like, what are these robes about? So right here we see that she's clad in armor and she's covered with flowing robes. A little bit more that we learn about it right here is that the monument stands on the former location of Portland's Market House, which was built in 1825 and also demolished. And right here, if we read down a little bit more, the old city hall was demolished in 1888. So another city here with a lot of demolition going on, and it's admitted demolition. It's like, yeah, we demolished all this stuff. Why? Why are you demolishing all this stuff? And so I'll just pull in some verses here to explain who the stone woman is. Just a brief explanation right here for the whole thing. That's on the We Zombie Rod of Iron channel, the stone woman presentation. Jeremiah 6:2, this is from the Old Testament, says, I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. Isaiah 54:5, thy maker is thine husband. Jeremiah 3:14, saith the Lord, I am married unto you. 2 Corinthians 11:2, I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. Revelation 21:2, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And Revelation 21:19, I will shew thee the bride, the Lamb's wife. So when we see this stone woman over and over and over again in all these cities, that's who she is. She is the Lamb's wife, and the Lamb is referring to Jesus Christ. So what we have here is a symbol of Jesus Christ, of God being married to his people, being married to the people that he covenanted with a long time ago, and that covenant continues to play out right now. But then the devil and all of his followers, they want to plunder and destroy and kill and drag God's children down to hell. And so he comes and he tries to destroy all of this stuff. And then another thing that him and his followers do is they take God's symbols and they use them in their ways. They use them in their perverted, corrupted type of ways. In a nutshell, that's what's going on here with the stone woman. It is a symbol of the ancient covenant God made with his people, his church. The robed woman is the symbol of his church, his bride adorned for the Lamb. So here's a couple more images of this stone woman right here. You'll see she's holding a sword, she's robed, she's crowned, she's got some leaves in this hand right here, and also a shield. All symbols that I break down very thoroughly in the stone woman presentation. You'll notice also this building back here is a bank building, Bank of America. And if we look right here, that same building used to be a different bank called the Costco Bank. And if we look at Costco, well, here's close to Portland, Maine, a Costco castle. But again, this is just a sign that has been slapped on the building trying to tell a new story, but this building wasn't built by Costco or anything to do with that. These are old ancient buildings, and new people showed up and put new signs on them and used them for their purposes. And then we'll see also right here an interesting engine also made by this Costco company. Here's just two more interesting pictures of this stone woman right here and all the stone architecture surrounding her. And also, you know, you've got train tracks right here, trolley tracks, which we'll talk more about in this video. Here's another look at her. This used to be a different building behind her that I guess they demolished and then built those bank buildings. But once again, you'll still see that this building behind her, just as always, a sign that you can just stick up there, pull it down, put a new sign up there, now the building's something else. And then this picture right here, if you're looking straight at the stone woman and then you look to your right, here's just a look at some of the stone architecture that's still sitting surrounding her. Very beautiful, excellent stone masonry. Here's another one. This is, I believe, to the left. If you're looking straight at her and then you look to the left, there's this huge building with all these very interesting symbols right here. Like these ancient people, these ancient faces depicted right here, all out of super heavy, perfect stone masonry. And this is, like I was just explaining a little bit earlier, why I've taken some time off is to explore some of these symbols and to really tell the story a lot better about where these symbols are coming from. Because I believe that tells just as much, if not more, of the truth of these buildings than the overall style of them and the overall weight of them. These symbols are very much, you know, different civilizations. So if you can figure out what the symbols mean, I think you start to learn a lot more about where these buildings actually come from and why we're being lied to about them. Here's a look at another one surrounding that stone woman right here, and you'll see just, let's turn this building into a FedEx office and let's put some pride flags all over it. And one thing that's really cool about Portland is they have a lot of stone roads. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the demolition that has occurred in this city, because for some reason it's really important to get rid of all this ancient stone architecture. And this is another thing, like, I used to think it was just some buildings here and there, and then as I started to put together how many of these buildings have been demolished, it's in the millions. Crazy, but it's like these numbers are huge. There's been some very, very serious efforts to demolish these ancient stone buildings, and it's literally in the millions of these things that have been demolished, and there's still a ton and a ton and a ton of them standing. Again, just completely destroying the narrative, the stories that were told in books and libraries and schools, and like it's way too much stone and way too much weight for a civilization that's just trying to get started, and that whole story. So here's some stuff they demolished in Portland, Maine. They had the market house, and this is one of those stories where if you're someone who's paid attention to these stories a lot, sometimes they do this thing where it's like they built this building and then tore it down and built another one and tore it down and built another one, and they had like 3 different city halls and 4 different post offices, and it's like this doesn't make sense. Like, there's no way you'd build that and then tear it down and then just build another one. But that's the story we're getting right here. And so this market house demolished right here, they give you this old picture of it, and then if we go right here, the old city hall demolished, they give you this picture of it, and then here's another image of what that city hall used to look like. Like, bro, these are just stupidly heavy buildings right here. And then you got this one right here, which is still standing, and it looks like this right now. And like, this is what I mean. Like, if you want, like, I get into this symbol right here in the stone woman presentation and where it comes from, stuff like that. But just another extremely heavy stone building right here with these towers on it, like these bell towers. At the very end of this video, I'll show you an interesting bell symbol that I found. And you got this other one, this other huge stone building right next to it. Here's a look at it more straight on. This is what it's the city hall now. The eagle in the stone woman presentation, I break down what the eagle is. This one right here isn't fully demolished, but the St. Dominic's Church right here, just super heavy stone masonry right here, bunch of red brick. And then if you look at this depiction of it, sometimes they kind of change the colors in these like postcard type depictions, but what we can still see is that there's a lot more going on this tower than is there nowadays. And that's one thing they often do, is sometimes it's just straight up demolish the whole building. Sometimes it's go in and pillage a little bit at a time. Sometimes it's strip a little bit of a time off the exterior of the building. In this case, that seems to be what's going on here, is that used to have a lot bigger and prettier tower, but that's got largely stripped off to where it's looking like this nowadays. And like I said, this demolition is part of the ancient conspiracy that the devil and his followers have made against mankind, that they're doing against mankind. And when you read the Old Testament, it talks a little bit about this. In 2 Kings 19:25 right here, it says, "Hast thou not heard?" By the way, this is the king of Assyria threatening to come destroy Jerusalem. And he's been on a rampage. He's been succeeding at demolishing and destroying cities and taking them over. And now he's got his eyes on Jerusalem, and he's like, hey, I'm coming for you. And he's like, haven't you heard long ago how I've done it? Of ancient times I've formed it. He's referring to the ancient conspiracy right here, these ancient plans to conquer and take over huge stone cities. And he says it's been formed of ancient times. And then he says, I lay waste fenced cities into ruinous heaps. Fenced cities meaning stone cities surrounded with stone walls, that type of a thing. And he says that he lays them into ruinous heaps. He destroys them. He tumbles them into heaps of stone. And then right here we learn even a little bit more about this ancient conspiracy that demolishes stone cities. It says, I've dried up all the rivers of the besieged places. So that's another part of it. And when you pay attention to these stone cities in our country, demolition has occurred a lot. And if you look at the surrounding areas, there's oftentimes walls surrounding them, covered up with dirt and shrubbery and stuff like that, but they're there. and oftentimes they're very tumbled, and oftentimes there's a bunch of canals and rivers and waterways that used to be there that are dried up and decommissioned now. Just a perfect match from the Old Testament about what's going on. And so here's an old picture of Portland, Maine right here, where we're seeing just some really gorgeous ancient stone architecture right here with a nice waterway running right through it. And then behind it right here is an ancient stone wall covered in dirt and shrubberies that we now just call mountains and hills, but that's not what that is. And then you can learn more about this ancient conspiracy in the Book of Mormon. It says there in 2 Nephi 26 verse 22, it says, "There are also secret combinations, even as in times of old, according to the combinations of the devil, for he is the founder of all these things, yea, the founder of murder and works of darkness." And this is a big part of what the Book of Mormon talks about, is that this is the promised land and that there were civilizations here before us that built amazing stone architecture, but then there's this ancient conspiracy, the devil's plans and all that, to destroy it all. And it says that they might murder and plunder and steal and commit whoredoms and all manner of wickedness contrary to the laws of their country and also the laws of their God. Sounds a lot like what's going on right now in these leadership government positions. And it says also in the Book of Mormon, when it's describing this ancient conspiracy and how they do things, they did obtain sole management of the government. There's a great description of what's going on nowadays. And all the other nonsense that's going on nowadays, and they're all getting away with it. Here's a nice description. And so here's a picture of one of these buildings in Portland, Maine. You know, if this is Portland, Maine, they say it is, but getting just demolished. Why? This looks like an incredible building. Just gave you the reasons why. There's an ancient conspiracy against mankind, and they want to destroy anything and everything that has to do with the scriptures, the civilizations in the scriptures, and the covenant that God made with mankind. And of course, we got to read about the fires. So in 1866, there was the Great Portland, Maine Fire. And when did it happen? On July 4th, Independence Day. What are the chances? And it says that it destroyed most of the commercial buildings in the city, half the churches, and hundreds of homes. There's been some serious demolition through all of these cities. In 1967, the city began the controversial razing meaning destruction, of Franklin Street to construct a limited access highway to improve access in and out of the city for non-residents. Yeah, because they're clearly just trying to make our lives better, aren't they? The reconstruction of the street demolished 130 homes and businesses and caused an unknown number of families to be relocated or displaced. Oh, but they helped improve access to the city for the non-residents. What about the residents of the city? You just destroyed their stuff and kicked them to the street? What's that about? And this is why I'm saying, this is why I made this Stone Woman presentation, is because there's a very real explanation for this stuff. It's not incompetent bureaucrats. It's a very competent conspiracy that is happening. And the fire was likely caused by a firecracker or a cigar ash. Come on. We know these are silly stories. These are made up. AI wrote them or something like that. Like, they're not real. They're lies. Around 1,800 buildings and 1,200 homes were burned to the ground. We're going to look at the burning again in a second. And right here, this poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, described his old hometown, desolation, desolation, desolation. And if we read right here in the Old Testament, Isaiah 1:7, your cities are burned with fire and it is desolate. Read the Old Testament and pay attention to how much it talks about cities being laid waste and made desolate. It's over and over and over again, and it says it's the ancient conspiracy. The devil and his followers, they're the ones that are doing it. Joshua 6:24, they burnt the city with fire. Mormon 5:5, cities were burned with fire. And they're always lying about the construction of this ancient stone architecture. This right here is the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception. Huge, just beautiful red brick castle. And what they say about the construction is that it began in 1866, and the construction of the church was interrupted by Portland's great 1866 fire, and it was not completed until September 8, 1869. What are we talking about right here? This thing, they say it got built in 3 years. Stick frame homes oftentimes are not getting built that fast. And this whole super heavy stone masonry structure in 3 years, and it was impeded by the Great Fire of 1866 that wiped out thousands of buildings. And then this isn't in Portland, this is in the capital of the state of Maine called Augusta. And this is the state house. Some states, they don't have what's called a capitol building, they have what's called a state house. Maine is one of the states that has a state house. And this is a look at it right here. And you'll notice on top of it right here is the stone woman made out of gold. And just take a look at how quickly it was constructed. Built 1829 to 1832, 3 years again. Not only were these people masterful, according to the story, not only were these cowboys and pilgrims masterful masons and knew how to move around stones that weigh 10 to 40,000 pounds each, they did it in 3 years. Quick, like boom, got it up and it's perfect, super fast. Here's the old post office, also in Augusta, the capital city of Maine. And this also has a rapid construction timeline, but let's just look at how much stone, how heavy this stone actually is, and how we're just throwing little cheap signs on it. Like, this is a crazy, crazy castle right here. And when was it built? 1886 to 1890. They only needed 4 years for this one. Just a quick 4 years, done. Perfect condition, and it can stand for another 1,000 years because it's that heavy of stone. The winds aren't going to mess with it. Big rainstorms, hail's not going to mess with it. Fire will burn the flag on the outside of it and this for lease sign, and it'll leave some black marks on the stone, but that's it. The thing will still be standing because it's that strong and that durable. Another word for that is it's fortified. It's a fortified structure. Super, super thick stone walls. And then another interesting thing in Maine is I went and I visited this Fort Prebble right here, and it's an enclosed star fort of masonry. So this is an old stone masonry star fort right here, deactivated, they say, in 1950. Here's a look at some of the pictures they give. And a star fort is often also called a bastion fort, which is these types of structures right here. They have these types of designs, lots of ditches, lots of walls, very difficult to enter into them if you're outside of them and you don't know exactly how to get in already. Here's another look at one, another shape of one right here. Here's a look at one where, you're seeing like the castle style towers connected to it. Here's a look at one where you've got big ditches surrounding it full of water, and then you've got the city kind of protected in the inside of it. Here's another similar one like that where the city is just protected inside of it. And if you look right here, this one's actually in Florida, so it's not Portland, it's not in Maine at all. But you can just come to this site right here and it will show you, like, give you some nice aerial views, and then you can also actually take a virtual tour and kind of like bounce around the inside of it and stuff. But these star forts, these bastion forts, are all over what we call the United States of America, which is actually the Promised Land. And the Book of Mormon talks about this. It says that they built walls of stone to encircle them round about the cities and the borders of their lands. They did fortify and strengthen the land. Here's an even better one. They had built forts of security for every city in the land round about. And I would say this is who built these star forts in the United States of America. It's the people that are called the Nephites. It's the civilization that the Book of Mormon talks about that used to live in the land now called United States of America. And if we look at these coastal defense and fortifications right here, I've got an interesting comparison to make. So these ones aren't in the United States, but if we look right here, I mean, this over here, like this section right here, this just gets called a mountain nowadays. But when you back the whole thing out, it's like, oh, this is actually just an old fortress that's just sitting in ruin and has kind of been destroyed a bit. And it's not, in some areas, it's very, very difficult to kind of make out that it's bricks and stones that have been stacked. But in other sections of it, you can see it really clearly that that is what's going on. And you see the same thing with this one right here in Colombia. Like if this was all covered in dirt and shrubs, then this would be a mountain. But if you actually pay attention to the stonework, it's just very old, ancient stone masonry. And so this right here we're seeing the same thing, right? There's just ancient stone masonry right here. And then these boulders out here they look like more natural, like Mother Earth created them, but I would say it's just the same thing going on right here. That all this stone that we see right here is just ancient stone masonry. And this is in Monterey, California. Here's another backed out look at it. So that's that section over there. But if you look at this section over here, it's the same thing where it's just these stone walls sitting right on the ocean. So the coast, well, what's the coast right here? The coast is ancient stone masonry. And here's another look at it, actually down on the water right here. You can see that these walls are ancient stone masonry. And these ones over here, that it's harder to tell that that's what it is, but it's just the same stuff, just in a lesser condition, in a more beat up, ruined condition. And here's another backed out view of another spot, and we're just seeing the same thing. This is all ancient stonework right here, ancient masonry, and that's what's actually forming these stone walls, or our coastline. It's ancient stone masonry right here that's forming our coastline, which is very interesting. And then, so that's in Monterey, California. That's kind of northern central California. If you come down to Southern California in Orange County, you can find the same thing also. This is right on the PCH in San Clemente, California. There's this ancient stone. These are actually stairs, but they're very, very steep stairs to get up. But if you look closely right here, you can see that the stone right here turns into all the rest of this. So what's going on right here is there's this nice intact stone. Right here, it's still nice and intact. And right here, there's more of it, but this section of it is more beat up and more in ruin and more difficult to tell that it's, just stacked stone masonry. But that's what it is. And I got some more pictures here where I can show you this. This is on the other side of it, and it's just the same thing. It's like this stone right here turns into this more beat up, rougher looking stone, but it's really just all the same structure. And so when you back it out and look at it, what is this whole wall right here? And there's other sections where you can see the same stuff going on, where this is actually just old stone masonry sitting in ruin, and you can find little sections of it that are still in good condition, and even you can see how they exactly fade and are connected to and are the same structure as the rest of the mountain, but the mountain, the wall, the coastline seems to be stone masonry. So here's a look at it looking straight on. It's very, very cool. And you can see right here up at the top that it's just covered in dirt, and over here it's fading into the more beat up section, but it's all just one continuous wall. Here's another look at it where you can see it very clearly. This is just stone masonry right here in ruin. Like right here, you can see them poking out. And this section, for whatever reason, is still nicely intact. And so when you're standing at Fort Prebble right here, there's this lighthouse right there, but then also right out here, there's another piece of the fort. And look, I'll show you right here. So that's Fort Georges, the one that we just looked at from Fort Prebble. But then they also have But then they also have this right here, Fort Scammell, which is out there. And then they have a Fort Williams and a Fort McKinley and a Fort Leavitt. And I would say these are all just pieces of the same star fort, just a really, really big star fort. And these are all just different sections of it that they're calling different separate forts. That's my take on what's going on here. And it also says about this Fort Georges that no battles were fought, no troops were stationed there. And the reason for that was because of advancing military technology. And the fort is now a park accessible only by boat. And then another thing that they love to demolish that is almost always connected to these castles and forts and stone cities is railroads and trains. So here's a look at the Portland Grand Trunk Station, as they call it. And it says most of the rail activity in Portland concerned agricultural goods. So what about all the stone that was getting moved around? And then there was another station right here, which is the Union Station, which, look at this. If you're just living in dirt and you're barely getting things going, you're not building this. And if you did somehow figure out how to build trains and use trains, like this is what you're building for your train station, that's wild. And this is where I'm saying this is all just lies. It's ancient architecture left over from previous advanced civilizations, and I believe the scriptures, Old Testament, New Testament, Book of Mormon, are telling us who built it and why we're lied to about it. And this Union Station was demolished in 1961. It operated from 1888 to 1960. So a little 72 years is all that it operated. It's like, well, wouldn't we all like to have trains right now? And I'll talk a little bit more in just a second about train versus cars. But another funny thing right here with this is it says the demolition led to the 1964 creation of Greater Portland Landmarks, a preservationist group. How does demolition lead to preservation groups? How does demolition lead to, if we look right here, historical societies? This is in San Clemente in Orange County, California, where I just showed you that interesting stone, those stairs that fade into the coastline, the walls, the ancient stone masonry walls. Well, right here, San Clemente's Prebble Castle was the symbol of the city. Its demolition. Oh, so we demolished symbols of the city? Its demolition in 1972 led to the founding of the San Clemente Historical Society. This is straight ancient conspiracy. This is devil speak. This is hee hee ha ha. We think we're so funny. This is mocking God is really what it is when you understand who built this stone architecture and what all these symbols on it and everything mean. But this is nonsense. This is such a lie. This is, well, I mean, you don't demolish the symbol of the city and then go, yeah, now let's create a historical society, unless you're crooked and evil and up to no good. And this is common. And look, when I was in Orange County, I went to some of these historical society meetings. Garbage. The people running them, garbage. Like there really truly is a conspiracy among us, and it started in ancient times. So if we look more at this Grand Trunk Railway Station, also demolished, why are we demolishing these gorgeous railway stations? Here's a look at the interior of it. Just look at this, all marble walls, marble pillars, huge, super tall ceilings. Just 100% the most masterful architecture that exists in the world. It's this type of stuff, and they're demolishing it. It says the station was constructed in 1903, and then the building was demolished in 1966. 63 years. Built it quick. It's the most gorgeous type of architecture. It's strong, it's fortified, it's sturdy, it's quiet inside because the walls are thick, unlike our 5 inches thickness of walls that we have nowadays, and we demolished it. Here's some other cool train pictures that I found where trains are truly amazing. Like I would highly recommend you look into trains, research trains, think about trains. Like, they are top tier transportation, like amazing transportation, and they can be very nimble and very efficient. They can carry a lot more passengers. They can carry a lot more weight. You know, that makes a lot more sense for how you can move some of this weight around. And you don't have to have insurance, and you don't have to have licenses to go on them. But if you want to strap people down, you want to control people through licenses and insurance, and you can and send men around with guns when the people are going 6 miles per hour too fast, well then yeah, get rid of the trains, get rid of the railway stations, throw down black asphalt, put them all in cars. Here's a look at some of the stone bridges that these trains used to run on. Just amazing stone architecture. There's the buildings, super impressive, but then there's the highways and the railways and the bridges that are connected with all of it. Here's another look at a section of it, and you'll see there's a section down here where trains run on, and then right here on top trains can run on. So you've got levels of trains just moving and grooving. Here's another look at it. You can see the trains down here, like, and this, you know, got stone architecture sitting on top up here. Here's another look at an old picture of Portland, Maine. You got the tracks on stone roads right here, big huge stone buildings and towers, really nice trolleys running around, also a little wood cart thrown in there. Here's another look at just some of this huge stone masonry right here, and as always, just put these little cheap signs on them. You can take them off, put new ones up real quick, and completely change what these buildings are about. And then you have another railroad building, which is this huge stone masonry building right here. At this one does still stand. They haven't demolished this one yet. Cars is a far inferior way of traveling, and it causes a lot more problems for us as the people. But for people in control positions, it works out a lot nicer for them, because now you have more control over people. You can send them in with guns around to go find you for going 6 miles per hour too fast. You can team up with the insurance companies and suck way more money out of people and make, you know, and then they got to go to the banks to get loans, and banks are practicing usury on you so you can get a car. But then even more than all that is this right here. Motor vehicles cause over 30,000 to 40,000 deaths annually, whereas railroad-related fatalities, including pedestrians, are generally fewer than 1,000 per year. So they included pedestrians in this stat, means someone's crossing the track when they shouldn't be and the train hits them. But just referring to like passengers traveling in the train, you don't die. Like, basically no one dies, and they're probably counting train deaths as someone had a heart attack on a train, which has nothing to do with the actual train. But when you're talking about car deaths, it literally is people crashing into things and other people, and people making the wrong turn and going, you know, spinning out of control. And like, cars cause a ton of death. Trains don't. So look, if there's really good train transportation and you're evil, well, let's get rid of the trains and let's put people in cars. Now they have debt. Now they're less connected to their community. Now we do this insurance thing. Now we send police officers around when they're going 6 miles per hour too fast. Now they have to get licenses. Now they have to register their vehicles and have these special tags on their cars, and a bunch more death. We can increase death just by getting rid of trains and putting people in cars. Here's another stat that I pulled up. Over 34,000 deaths caused by car accidents in 2016. In comparison, only 892 deaths caused by train accidents that same year. Those are huge numbers. So if the people in charge really care about keeping us safe and keeping people alive, like we've seen them claim to do over the last years, put us all in trains. Put the trains back. Take the cars away, because cars are killers. They kill a lot of people. Put the trains back. And when you look in the Old Testament, 2 Chronicles 26:15, he made in Jerusalem engines invented by cunning men. This is one of the things I lay out in the Stone Woman presentation, is that whenever we're shown these civilizations from the scriptures, from the Bible, it's always poor dirt people wearing rags. They're living in dirt. They're super like not advanced. But if you actually read the books about what the books are saying, if you actually read the verses in these books, that's not what they're saying. So there's this disconnect going on where the books say one thing, but the information and the visuals that's presented to us is a poor dirt rag story. But if you actually go read what the scriptures are saying, it's describing advanced, prosperous civilizations moving around and building with super, super heavy stones. And many people would try to say, oh no, it's talking about something else. Engines meant something else. And no, it's invented. Cunning men, advanced men, men who were very, very good at designing products, invented engines. It says what it says. You go to the Book of Mormon and you get the same stuff. There were many highways cast up and many roads made, which led from city to city, from land to land, from place to place. The Book of Mormon, when the stories are told and when the images are shown to us, it's poor dirt rag people living in poor dirt cities, and it's not what the text says. The text says these are advanced, prosperous people moving super heavy stone, building highways, casting up highways, many roads made, city, city, land, land, place to place. And they weren't just walking on all these roads. These highways weren't just for walking, they were running trains on them. And now for a little bonus, bells. I found this interesting piece of stonework, all this symbolism right here. And I'm definitely not going to claim to know what it is, but I think it's interesting to see that maybe all these right here on the bottom are bells. And then there's like some wires coming up out of the top of them, coming into whatever this is. It kind of looks like a hat. I don't think it's a hat, but anyways, I just think, bells, like these huge towers, there's often bells in the top of them. Bells were a very big part of this architecture. And I just think this is an interesting depiction of some bells right here and connecting to something.